Hi everyone, I'm Helen and I'm the Head of Policy and Campaigns here at DCC, and I'm really pleased to say that today I've been joined by Dr. Gemima Fitzgerald, who is a clinical psychologist with a strong interest and expertise in the area of building resilience. In this instalment of our monthly Wellbeing Wednesday sessions, we're going to be discussing identity, which is a very broad term. So I'm going to invite Gemima to firstly introduce herself, and then secondly to give us a brief overview of what we'll be discussing in this session.
Hi, thanks, Helen. Yes, so some of you may have seen me on these wellbeing sessions before, but my name's Gemima and I'm a clinical psychologist, as Helen's already said. So yeah, my doctoral research was around resilience, and by that I mean, how we cope with adversity, really hard things in life. And I've been involved with Dementia Carers Count now since 2017, so quite a long time. So yeah, today we're really focusing on carers' well-being and particularly the area of identity, and we would just want to explore why identity is so often affected for family carers of people with dementia, and what's difficult about that and what we can do about it, really, what will be helpful.
Lovely, thank you. And as always, please send us your questions in the chat and we'll try and answer them. Please bear with us. It isn't always easy to spot all the questions, and it might be that we run out of time. And I also know that some people prefer to send a private message to keep it anonymous, and of course that's absolutely fine. Please feel free to do that if you prefer to. But if we don't get to answer your question in this session, we will spend some time at the end going through the chat and answering all the questions that have been raised. So, Gemima, identity could mean many different things, but what is personal identity and why is it so important?
Yeah, gosh, so identity is really, it's the unique set of characteristics that make you, that make you different from other people. And these characteristics are what you use and what other people use to identify you as a person. And that can be made up of your personality, the things that make you tick, the things that some of your strengths, some of the things that you find more difficult, some of your abilities, some of your skills, your likes and dislikes, your values, your belief systems, your moral compass, whatever that is, things that motivate you, things that interest you, things that inspire you, things that hurt you and get you down. So it's all of that stuff, and really identity can be kind of split into two kind of sections. So one is like the social side of identity, so your social face, how other people would identify you, what they see, and that what they see might be stuff that you're aware of, and it might be your blind spots as well, things that you aren't aware of about yourself, maybe some of your strengths that you don't really recognize in yourself. And also maybe some of the things that other people see that you're really struggling with, that you haven't quite identified or accepted in yourself. So you've got that social side, but then you've also got the sense of self, the internal identity, which is really, really important, more important really. And that's how you feel about yourself, how you feel inside, who you think you are. And that can be really affected. So when you become a family carer, so who am I? What do I feel about life? It's such a big topic, but yeah, that's identity.
So when carers are often telling us that they no longer feel like themselves anymore, they're referring to quite a big feeling of their own identity and how become a carer means that they sometimes no longer feel that way about themselves. This must have a big impact on them. And why is their identity so impacted when they become a carer?
Yeah, the amount of times that family carers have said that to me, and I know to other people that work for DCC, I don't feel like me anymore. That is such a common thing to say and to feel, whether people say it out loud or just internally feel it, and it can feel really destabilizing, because for most of us our identity stays pretty stable as we go through life, but it tends to get hijacked or to really shift when we go through a major life event. And obviously becoming a family carer of someone with dementia is a major life event. So some of those things, when I was talking at the start, some of the things that make us feel like us, the things we enjoy, our likes and dislikes, our values, some of that can get really shaken when you become a family carer of someone with dementia, because maybe you're not able to do the things that made you feel like you anymore. Maybe you're not able to socialize. Maybe lots of people say, oh, I don't feel like I've got a sense of humor anymore. I'm not laughing at things. Or maybe not. Maybe that stuff has stayed intact, which is wonderful. But really, you know, lots of people say that they don't feel like themselves. Their personality has shifted, and that can be as a result of feeling, you know, maybe really low in mood and depressed, or maybe just exhausted and flat. But definitely that sense of, you know, I'm not me anymore. I'm not able to spend time on things. And I think sometimes what I've noticed is that it tends to feel worse for carers if they didn't have a strong sense of self before they were a family carer. So maybe they never really, you know, if you've been in a situation where you've not really been trusting your own judgment in issues. So maybe that's a low sense of self-esteem, or being in a relationship, or a difficult relationship, or something like that, where you don't trust your own judgment. Your sense of self can be quite destabilized, and I don't know what I want in life. I don't know how I feel. And then you become a family carer of someone with dementia. That can make it really, really more difficult. And just having that sense of reduced, when you're not feeling like you're able to spend time doing what you want, you're not, you know, becoming a family carer of someone with dementia isn't something you probably chose to do. It's something that's just happened to you in life. So you didn't get a lot of free will in that. You didn't get to exercise much choice in it. So that sense of identity can be really, really affected. And maybe, you know, therefore the sometimes it's what people see. So that social sense of identity can be like, you know, people don't see me as me anymore. I'm not able to go to the gym or see my friends or do all the things I used to love doing, or I've had to give up work, or such major life changes. And then that affects the internal sense of self and identity, which is, oh gosh, you know, who am I? What's life all about? It can, really deep stuff, actually.
No, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, then what we find as well is some carers are very reluctant to adopt the role of carer. So maybe take on that identity. So they still want to see themselves as the person that they were to the person they're caring for. Why do you think this is?
I think, as I said before, you know, becoming a family carer of somebody with dementia isn't something that most people chose. You know, no one would choose it, really. No one would want their person to have dementia in the first place, and then to have the role. Although it can be a privilege, it's also so difficult. And so having that that sense of, I didn't choose this, therefore I don't really want that term. You know, the term carer, it can be really hard for people to accept. And, you know, maybe you don't feel like a carer, you still feel like a wife, or you are a wife or a husband or a daughter or a sister, or whatever that relationship is. So you know, just because you are in the situation where you're caring for somebody, it doesn't mean you're no longer those other things as well. So some people really struggle with that, and struggle to call themselves carers. And, you know, what we know about what is a carer? A carer is somebody who, you know, if a friend or a family member of yours has dementia and they need your support in any way to live, you know, whether that's socially or practically or emotionally, whether you live with them or not, then you are a carer. And it might be really hard to accept that. And you don't have to call yourself a carer. You can call yourself whatever you want. There's no rules to this, but there are some benefits of sort of accepting that that's a part of you. It's not all of you. It doesn't define you. It's not all you are. And, you know, how, as I was saying at the start, people often say, I don't feel like me anymore, because you're not just a carer. That's just an element. It might feel like, well, that's all I'm doing 24 hours a day now, but you are still you. You are still you. You're just doing something different with your time.
Yeah, and we just heard from someone in the chat actually, who says actually if they feel guilty calling themselves a carer, they live separate from the person that they care for, and although they speak with them every night and they travel up there once a month and they do what they can to kind of support the person, and it sounds very busy, but they're not the main care provider. So it's the brother that does cope with the day-to-day needs, and I think that must be the situation that many carers are in, that actually they're not even quite able to see themselves as carers because someone else is doing the day-to-day, but the support they provide is them being a carer, isn't it? I mean, that is something that should be borne in mind from people who are providing that role and that support.
100%. There's not I don't know, like a ranking system of who's the most carer, like in the family. It's, if you are involved and somebody is benefiting from your support, whether that's phone calls and emotional support, whether that's, more personal care, whatever it is, whether you live with them or not, how often you see them, we as a charity still identify you as a carer, and you are a family carer of somebody with dementia, or a friend of a carer.
And I think as well, it's about, because I think there's some guilt in this comment that he feels that he should be providing more, but I think everyone who pulls together and provides support in a network, that is vital, isn't it? It does take more than one person quite often to provide that care, and everyone's doing what they can, is a benefit to the person living with dementia.
And often it's about communication, being able to talk to the rest of your family. So with this person that's messaged in, having a chat with his brother, and if he hasn't already, he probably has, but having a chat and saying, look, I feel guilty about this, but I'm doing what I can. And sometimes just having those conversations can be really helpful. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And another aspect of being a carer and identifying is that, regardless of how you see your role, it's very easy for carers to neglect, and I think you've already touched on this, their own health and well-being when they have caring responsibilities, isn't it? It's something we see quite often, because carers, as you said, put the person they're caring for first, put their needs first. It can be difficult to look at their own sort of needs and the support that they actually need.
100%. I think often when someone's a carer, what we see and what we hear from people is that they neglect themselves. You tend to put yourself last, and when you don't, and when you do actually do something for yourself, then you feel guilty about that. So it's hard to even fully appreciate and enjoy that moment of self-care. So we know that putting in some really good boundaries is important when you're a family carer of someone with dementia, not because we're telling you to be selfish, but because we're telling you to look after yourself, and that isn't selfish. And sometimes that sense of identity can be really reduced and diminished because we don't have good boundaries. And that's not a blame thing, that it's really hard to have good boundaries. It's hard to say no to anything or to prioritize yourself when you are caring. It's such a difficult thing, but we know it really does benefit people.
Absolutely. I mean, and on that, it's about also acknowledging how you are feeling. We've got another person in the chat just saying that her husband doesn't know who she is anymore, and she doesn't know who she is anymore. And she says he moved into a home just before Christmas, but it's hard to carry on as if everything is as it should be. And obviously what she's trying to do is keep everything going. But obviously there's a challenge in that, isn't there? It's about sort of maybe acknowledging how you're feeling in a situation as much as how the person you're caring for might be feeling as well.
It's a huge loss, and we know when somebody moves into a care home, you've gone from doing that, really day-to-day care in the house, in your home, and living together, to suddenly not living together and having to let other people do the day-to-day care, and that you're still a wife, but when your husband doesn't recognize you as a wife, it's really hard to still feel that, and there's a lot of loss and grief that comes with that. So it's really important to acknowledge that it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, and the fact that you're trying to carry on as you should be, well, that's going to be really difficult because things aren't the same, are they? The things have massively changed, but you are still you, and what's really important is to just spend some time thinking about, what do I still enjoy? If you can, talk to other people, talk to a friend or a family member if there is anyone you can talk to, or phone our carer support line, and just find ways to express yourself, because often family carers haven't expressed themselves, haven't expressed their own thoughts and their own needs. It's all been about the person with dementia for so long, and they've kind of lost their voice within it. So it's really important to start talking and start expressing yourself, and in tapping into you know, what are my values? What do I still care about? What still makes me tick? And how can I still find meaning and value in my life, despite this situation, whether it's because I'm caring or whether because the person I'm caring for has now moved into a home, you know, these are huge life adjustments. So yeah, it's important to still feel that you've got a voice in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. And I think as well, the people around you might not necessarily know, and we definitely hear from carers that feel sometimes quite frustrated that they don't feel understood, that they don't feel what their experience is being understood. So perhaps if you can, and you are in a position to share with friends and family and wider networks, you know, just how it feels and what you are thinking, I guess that's quite a valuable way of reinforcing sort of what it is about you as a carer. So, and also helps other people understand, because I do think it's one of those sort of roles that people take on, like you say, not with choice, but and it can get very easily taken for granted, you know. So I think
it's such a hidden role, isn't it? And I think that's one of the problems. It's not something that's got a lot of status in this world, you know, being a family carer of someone with dementia. And that's a problem, you know, because actually it's a really, really valuable job. We know that it saves, I think it saves the economy. Being a family carer of someone with dementia saves the economy, is it £13.9 billion a year? Or it's a huge amount of money that it's saving the economy, let alone the incredible value it's doing for your person that you're caring for. So you know, what you do is incredibly valuable, and you might not be, probably aren't getting that recognition from people, but if you can talk about it, and if you can start to identify that that's a part of the amazing things you do in your life and have done in your life, part of your life story, then I think that's really important.
And I think actually that just touches on something that we've had another carer in the chat talking about, having been criticised for being a carer. This is of children who have disabilities, but been told to get a proper job, and he'd had to leave a proper job. And I think it goes back to what you were saying about caring is not seen as, you know, proper, and it's not seen as what it is, a vital, essential thing that needs to happen. And also that you need more accommodation within the workforce as well. The identity of being a carer in the workforce is another kind of tricky area, I think, for a lot of carers, trying to kind of feel their way around being a carer and then introducing that into the workplace if they want to, and how that works. So I think it's really interesting what you just said, because that's been borne out by
and I'm so sorry that person has been told that to go and get a proper job, you know, because I know I don't feel like that, and I know you don't, Helen. I know that dementia carers count. We really value what you do, and it is a proper job, and that is so undermining, isn't it? People sometimes, their ignorance, it's said out of ignorance, it's said for whatever reason, but for you, you need to know that what you are doing is incredibly valuable. And some of the most valuable things in life aren't sort of you don't get that public recognition, but it doesn't mean it's not incredibly important. It is a proper job. It is something that's life-changing and wonderful for the person that you are caring for, or people in your case that you're caring for.
Absolutely, yeah, completely agree. I think, and yeah, we need to shout about carers more and the vital things they do, because you know, without carers, where would we be anyway? Going back to the earlier conversation we're having about the other roles that a carer might have, including wife, husband, daughter, friend, neighbour. Obviously, they might want to continue these roles, but it is important. I mean, I think we're going to go on to discuss how important it is for carers to try and acknowledge that role in terms of accessing some benefits, getting some recognition. Is there a way of helping, before we get onto the sort of the more nuts and bolts, is there a way of helping people to understand that they have multiple roles? I've heard it before described as you have many hats, and you're putting on different hats, and you might have more than one hat on at a time. But is there a way of helping people to recognize that, so that perhaps it can help them then identify as a carer as well as other roles that they have?
And I think it's really important, isn't it, that to say that, you know, if you are helping someone who has dementia, whether that's a friend or a family member, whether you live with them or not, then you are identified as a carer of someone with dementia. However, that is not all you are. As I've said before, you know, that's a part of who you are. And as you said, Helen, yes, different hats. You know, you might be a daughter and a sister and a mother and a family carer and a retired teacher. You know, there could be so much, and there will be so much about you. You're not, no one of those things is all that you are. But to be able to sort of accept that that's a part of you. It doesn't mean you stop becoming a wife, or that you stop becoming a daughter, or whatever it is, a husband, but it's a part of what you're doing in your life, a part of your role. Then there are some benefits to accepting that. For example, you know, you could be entitled to an assessment of carers, a carer's assessment, to see what your needs are. You might be entitled to some benefits, but also just that internal sense of, if you can start to like lift up your head a little bit and see that being a family carer or a carer of somebody with dementia is so valuable, and it's a great thing to embrace about who you are. It's something that you should actually feel really proud of, in, you know, even if you feel that you're struggling and you're not doing, you know, what you think is a good enough job. You know, it's incredible what you're doing, and if you can take a little bit of ownership and even a little bit of a sense of accomplishment from having that role as a part of who you are, and it doesn't define you, then it's good for could be good for your finances, but it's also could be good for practical help, but also it could be very, very good for your mental health and your well-being. And just, you know, if there are parts of us that we reject, it's never good for us. But actually, this is a part of your life story. You know, for this season in your life, this is a part of who you are, and to be able to accept that and embrace it, if possible, is really, really good for you.
I think that's amazing. Yeah, I completely agree, of course. But also, I think, as you were saying, as I was reflecting on the fact as well, that you bring in, so it's, whereas I described it as separate hats, but actually as a carer, you're bringing in the years you've spent either, you know, married to that person, friends with that person. Yeah. That might be your dad or your mum, and you're bringing that knowledge and expertise that no one else has. Even, you know, siblings won't have the same kind of insight that you have. And so I suppose it's really important actually to kind of take pride in that and say, you know, I'm better than, you know, not, but you know what I mean, in what I'm bringing.
You added value. You've got added value.
Added value, exactly. So that you can actually sort of say, well, actually, when you're talking to a healthcare professional and you're slightly, you know, it's quite a difficult situation sometimes, you have that identity. I'm a carer and a wife. I'm a carer and a daughter. Can give you that little bit more, I suppose, that sort of, like you said, holding your head up and saying, no, I'm the person you need to speak to about this, you know, and hopefully feel, you know, you can take pride in that, in what you're offering.
100%, Helen, because as we know, you know, the person that has dementia, they don't just become a person with dementia, they're still them too. You know, they are still them. They might behave differently and think differently, but they're still them. And having all that knowledge of their likes and dislikes, personality type, what makes them feel safe, what makes them feel anxious, you know, all the things that was pre-existing, what they used to do as a job, you know, think people that they've loved in their life, having all that knowledge and expertise and just that relationship and you know, that you've cultivated through your lifetime is so precious and so valuable, and you can't put a price on that. You know, you could pay someone to come in and help, and that's a good thing often, but they can't have that. They can't have that relationship. So yeah, it's what you've got. You're never just a carer. That's
absolutely. I think that's definitely one thing I'm definitely going to take away from this session, is never just a carer. There's just so much more to it. And actually, just one more in the chat is about someone who's worried about their brother who's caring for their dad, and just he thinks he's struggling. And obviously we know carers have a lot on. It's a very, very difficult role to take at times. How can this person support his brother if his brother's not really opening up about how it is to be caring? Because we talked about how important it is to open up, but if someone isn't opening up and you're suspecting there's an issue or there's a problem, how might you sort of go about tackling that?
Difficult, isn't it? It's difficult when someone doesn't want to talk. And you know, I don't know, obviously I don't know this person's brother. I don't know what the reasons are that they might not be wanting to talk. So I'd have a little think, you know, from this person that's messaged in, you know, from what you know about your brother, what do you think the reasons are that they don't want to talk? Is it because they don't like talking, full stop? Or is it because, you know, you think that maybe they're a bit scared to admit that they're struggling and they are not coping? Maybe there's some shame there. You know, I would always offer the chance to talk, you know, and just say, look, I'm here if ever you need me, just making it as easy as possible. But also, you know, just if you think that they're struggling, just you maybe giving them some information saying, you know, about Dementia Carers Count. Say, you know, have you checked out this website? There's some great resources on there. It might be that would be an easier thing for them to do, or you could suggest that they phone the carer support line or the 24-hour text line. Because it could be that it's just difficult to talk to you about it because you're close, and sometimes it's really hard to talk to people you're close to. Sometimes you need a stranger to talk to. You know, there's all sorts of different layers to it. But I think just recognizing, and if talking is just definitely a no-no for your brother, then just being there, like even if it's just checking in with them. Hi, how you doing? Just keeping up that contact so that they don't feel too isolated and alone. I think it's probably a good start.
Absolutely. And I think for the person who made the inquiry, if you want to get in touch with us as well, because
please,
it is also something that's touching on you, and we offer free support and advice and information. So it might even be that you can, you know, find out a little bit more about the condition if that's what you need, and that can help you be more equipped when you're talking about the situation. It might help, but it's definitely open for you too if you want to get in touch with us.
Yeah.
A few more questions in the chat, and I think some people are struggling to actually make the time for themselves. So I guess it goes back to what you were saying about
really hard.
Sort of prioritizing it and telling yourself that it's important. I mean, you know, it's important for you, it's important for the person you're caring for, but primarily it's important for you to try and, you know, ring fence that time. Is that right? Would you say that?
Yeah. And you know what, sometimes if you really have zero time, which let's face it sometimes is the case, you can do everyday tasks either in a routine, mundane, mindless way, or you can do it more carefully and mindfully. So for example, even just brushing your hair, you can either just rip the hairbrush through your hair when you get a chance without even thinking about it, or you can just take an extra moment to just brush your hair with a bit of care and love. When you put your moisturizer on, if you use moisturizer, rubbing it in with self-care and doing these tasks sometimes with a bit of self-kindness and love can actually make a difference. So it's not always about time, it's how you do things, whether you're rushing through things or whether you're taking the time to care about yourself and recognize that that's what you're doing and it's doing you good.
Absolutely. I mean, we have had a lot of interest in the chat and we're very keen to get back to you. So we might be that we will be getting back to people separately outside of this, because we've covered quite a lot. And also, if you'd like some more information on anything we've discussed today, because we'd be really happy to help, you know, provide any more information. We also have a wealth of information on our website, and we'll leave a link in the comments. So and also if anything we've raised you want to discuss further, you can get in touch with our support team via the support inbox, which is support@dementiacarers.org.uk, and someone will get back to you. I'm going to be joined by Jane Stansfield, one of our associate practitioners, for a Facebook Live on the 24th of May, and we'll be looking at carers assessments. So if that's something that you got any interest in, please join us for that, and we'll help with some practical advice and information about what you might be able to expect and what you should be able to ask for. And then I just really want to wrap up and say thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Gemima. It's been such a great session. And I think hopefully people have started to take a little bit more pride, if they hadn't had pride before, and starting to think about themselves and how they want to be as a carer. Please join us on the 5th of April for our next Facebook Live, and that will be with Sue Hines, lovely Sue, and Dr. Raja, and they will be discussing mild cognitive impairment. And just finally, Gemima, when's the next Wellness Wednesday session? Oh, I have it here. I'm not putting you on the spot.
I don't know. I know it's next month.
It is. Surprising, you know. It's Wednesday, the 26th of April, and it's on resilience. So that will be great after this session. And as always, I think we've mentioned, we always have plenty of online sessions that are free to book onto. So you can do that via our website. So just as a final thing I want to say is thank you so much for joining Gemima and I, and take care and have a wonderful day. Thank you.